everyone on this planet does their best to understand the differences that we have, the world would already be a much better place.
If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
Probably more understanding. Let's say understanding and compassion. I think that a lot of problems, in particular, a lot of conflicts. I'm talking about conflicts. I'm someone who hates conflicts. If I can, I avoid conflicts, I love to find resolutions. And a lot of resolutions, whether it's in personal relationship or global relationship and so on, they happen with understanding. They happen with understanding the differences that we have as human beings, the cultural differences that we have. And I think just embracing that, and if we understand, and everyone on this planet does their best to understand the differences that we have, the world would already be a much better place.
So you're saying more compassion?
Yeah, just instead of trying to impose a point of view, you're first listening and you're learning from them. And then you see, okay, how can the point of view align? Which is a much more empowered place to create a long-term solution on a personal level and a global level. That would be the one thing. How about you? What would yours be?
I was actually having a conversation about this with my wife last night. I think what I would want to see is a world unified into a single country. What I'm not liking is how much division there is in between, both within countries but also outside. Like, for example, if the whole world will say something like, okay, let's try and fight climate change and try to lower pollution and switch to nuclear or whatever, you'd still have countries that don't subscribe to the same belief and they continue to pump gases into the atmosphere. There's been a lot of talk about back in the times of COVID, when COVID was losing the narrative in the news and they needed something else to talk about.
So something new to talk about.
Yeah. So they switched talking about like nuclear power and switching to electric vehicles, even though that's not really a solution to climate change. But China became like the big villain, because China emits so much pollution every year that even if we get like a bunch of different countries together to lower their numbers, China will still outperform all these in a negative way. So what I would do, I would want to see us switching from a model of countries to one country and maybe mega cities. And I would also have everyone speak the same language. I think it's a problem when we can revert back to our own language barrier. And I've seen it many times. So I've had 2 immigrations in my lifetime, one from Ukraine to Israel, another one from Israel to Canada. And I speak Russian, Hebrew, Ukrainian, and English. And seeing how different cultures interact based on their languages is fascinating. And also seeing how within, say, Canada, you've got clusters and communities. You got the Russian community that doesn't talk to the Ukrainian community, that doesn't talk to the Jewish community. You got some people who overlap, but there's a very distinct communication barrier in between. So if we all spoke the same language, that alone would have pushed us tremendously towards a unified front and ability to just freaking, have a conversation.
Yo, it's Igor. I want you to have my Amazon best-selling book for free for taking the time to listen to my podcast and to watch my YouTube videos. Now, I'm not only going to give you this book for free, but I'm going to throw in about $3.2 thousand in free bonuses. Now, if you want to get this book, please click the link in the description, or you can also go to igorsbook.com. And now, back to the podcast.
What about, though, the loss that there will be in terms of like individual culture? Or because one of the things that I love about the word is actually how different the diversity is. You know, you go to a new country, you speak a new language, and of course it is a barrier in a situation, but it is the discovery and and if I find, traveling and seeing different cultures, hearing different languages, seeing different ways of approaching life makes me more complete as a human being, makes me better, makes me understand more. How would you deal with that part though?
I wouldn't. I think people would still find a way to show their individualism. And besides, when you say individualism, if we look from a macro perspective on different cultures, you see so many. So like if if a person out of Israel like myself goes to Canada and is now a part of a Canadian society, I'll stand out. I'll stand out like a fart in an elevator, really, and I'll seem like an individual. I'll seem unique. But you put me back in Israel, I don't seem that very much unique at all. So I think it's more of everybody will find that group or a group belief that they subscribe to. If we speak the same language, we can still be members of a Harley Davidson bike club. We can still support the same football team. We can still express ourselves in a certain form of art. We can still dress a certain way. But if two people are communicating from different countries, it's so challenging to establish a connection. Like we really have to zoom out so much and say, well, let's agree that we're both human beings. Can we agree on that? Yes. Let's agree that we love our families and we want the best for our families. Can we agree on that? Yeah. So you really have to go all the way back. But if we spoke the same language, I think it would have been a much easier journey to agreement.
Yeah, I guess I still have this, not nostalgia, but as Italian, I like traditions, and I think, and one of the things that I love the most is seeing different traditions, and it's fascinating even going to Italy, back to Italy. We have strong traditions. Every region has a different tradition. If you think about Italy, until 100 years ago, every region was speaking a different language. Like my grandma from the south of Italy couldn't speak with my grandma from the north of Italy. That's 2 generations ago. It's my grandmother's. And the language, like the Italian language, didn't exist. They had the regional language and they were completely different from north to south. And then it got unified. And of course, there is power in unity. I agree with you. There is power in unity. And imagine if we all work together as a word and the language helps us all working together, becomes unstoppable. I don't even see the limit of what we can develop. And at the same time, I can see, the going in the south of Italy or going the north of Italy and then seeing, how the different dishes are cooked or how my grandma's dialect is and switching dialects from one grandma to the other. There is something beautiful about that too.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't want to lose. But
that's only because we're attached to what we know, right? Like in many ways, I wouldn't want to lose my Ukrainian heritage or the good parts of the Israeli heritage. But say my kids are not growing up in Canada, they have no references to those things. To them, these things are nice haves, but not a necessity for survival, and not the way not the way the world is supposed to work. There's no idea that they have. It's like, oh, this is how the world's supposed to work. So you and me, we're just hostages to these ideas because that's how we grew up, and we reminisce about these simpler times. And I think that's just human nature, and that's fine.
I agree with you. Our kids will be completely different.
They will.
They will see the world in a different way because maybe my kids will grow up in the UK. They will have very little reference to the Italian heritage or the Caribbean heritage that my wife has. I'm with you.